I am always, you get aggregated, and I've always found you to be a good journalist, and if not in the center, aspiring to objectivity, neutrality, fairness, equality. It must be so strange to you to see what is happening a week before this election, the presidential standard disgraced in a way that, offends us every day, every sentence, every syllable.
Yeah, look, you asked, so I'm not going to dodge it, but Kamala Harris is not an ideal candidate and may have to grow into the job if she wins it in a way that she hasn't shown us yet. But this is not a political question for millions of us. This is a moral question, and would be no matter who opposed Donald Trump. There is nothing wrong with being a Republican or a conservative. Nothing wrong with that. I read George Will on a regular basis and Peggy Noonan in the Wall Street Journal, and people who like to have binary descriptions of people and label me left wing or whatever. I'm like Bill Maher, if you watch Bill Maher at all. I'm a center left guy, a classic liberal who is troubled by the distortions of leftism, which is different than liberalism. And some of that is an anchor around Kamala Harris's neck now, because she can't distance herself from some of the worst of it, even if she doesn't fully embrace it. Over the years, excesses on the left hand Fox News their talking points on a silver platter, or in this case, the Trump candidacy points. And I can understand people having serious misgivings about Biden's record, about the way the Dems kind of gaslit the public about Biden's fitness, both as a candidate and to have a second term as president. There are some policies that can't be defended. You cannot defend what has gone on for a long time at the border. You can certainly defend attempts, not just defend, but advocate attempts at reforming the police and justice. The justice system historically has been tilted against African Americans and other people of color. The justice system and policing can be reformed, but the idea that you'll just throw all that out the window and have cities beset by crime and social disorder, that's something that helps the Trump candidacy, even though that candidacy is about a man who is a liar, a lunatic, and an ignoramus. All those things. It's a moral question. And you have never seen, in my lifetime and maybe ever, a presidential candidate with so many of those who are rock solid Republicans and conservatives and who worked closely with him and whose credibility and credentials cannot be questioned, saying the most important word, unfit. He is unfit to hold any position of public trust, let alone the presidency. So there are millions of people who may have misgivings about aspects of Kamala Harris's candidacy, but who cannot stomach the idea that somebody whose entire being is antithetical to actual patriotism, to American principles, to common sense and common decency. That's the thing that, to me, is the deciding factor. The irony of this is that if the GOP wasn't so shameless with not just MAGA people in their red hats, but lifelong Republicans, most of whom lack the spine and devotion to principle to reject Donald Trump. They all come crawling to him and kiss his ring. All the Josh Hawleys and Ted Cruzes and all the rest, and it's a very long list of spineless sycophants. If they weren't so shameless, and if they had come to their senses, it's pretty clear that a center-right candidate, an honest, decent, sane center-right candidate, a Mitt Romney and Adam Kinzinger, easily defeats Kamala Harris. But at the same time, a sensible center-left Democrat who doesn't have some of the negatives of Biden and some of the wokeness stuff that troubles people, able to distance him or herself from that center-left candidate would easily defeat Donald Trump. But these are our choices at this point. And don't waste your vote on Jill Stein.
How confusing is it to you as somebody who's watched, 40 years of journalism and broadcasting, seeing the media sort of fall to corrupt and corporate interests and now billionaires, running the Washington Post and LA Times? How alarmed are you by how dumb the conversation has gotten a week before the election, where today's talking point is Biden calls Trump supporters garbage, and yesterday's talking point is the comedian speaking at the Nazi rallies at Madison Square Garden?
Well, I heard one of your guys there say that it was a misstep or something of that sort. What happened at that rally? None of that's a misstep. The people cheered that. Maybe not all of them, but they didn't leave in revulsion. And the general tone of it, that guy, whoever the heck he is, got most of the attention. But you've got someone up there saying, all of them, they're all degenerates. All the Democrats are degenerates, And this is something where if you live in a bubble, anything that aligns with what you want to believe about your guy, or in a negative way about the other person, is automatically embraced. And a mountain of evidence and a choir of angels on the other side of the argument isn't going to convince you at this point, especially because if you're in that bubble of talk radio or Fox News in this case, or the internet, you're either not going to hear about it, or you're going to hear defenses of it, deflections, rationalizations. So we know in this case, Biden said what he said. I'm trying to be as kind as possible. Everyone knows what that is. Biden's only 50-50 to make his way through a paragraph of 2 or 3 sentences without a gaffe. He truly misspoke. It's typical of him, and it's the reason why he's no longer the candidate. But this is fodder now for people who don't bat an eye when from the beginning, Trump has always said, if you don't vote for me, you're not going to have a country anymore. He simultaneously brands Democrats as communists, Marxists, socialists, leftists, and fascists. I don't think he could define any of those terms. I don't think he could pass a 10th grade civics or history test. But that doesn't matter. When he says that we will rid the country of the vermin within, we will cast them out. I am your retribution. Kamala Harris is a low IQ individual. All these disparaging things that are actually beneath the level of wit and intelligence that you'd expect from the dopiest kid in the back of the room in the 6th grade. Apparently, those aren't incitements. But the dear little snowflakes on the right, all of whom are always making fun of political correctness and all the rest, they are triggered by the least little thing. So their thing is, hey, if you quote Mark Milley or John Kelly, people of impeccable integrity and honesty and credibility, if you quote them as saying that Donald Trump is unfit, if you quote them as saying that he has fascistic tendencies and that not he is Hitler, no one said that. They said that he said something which indicated that he thought at least some aspect of what Hitler was something that he found appealing. If you quote that, obviously Kelly, whose word are you going to take? Kelly or Trump? Obviously that happened. If you quote that, the way they frame it is you are putting Trump's life in peril. There have been 2 assassination attempts. It's because of left-wing Democratic rhetoric. There has never been rhetoric like what Donald Trump has spewed ever since he descended that escalator. There are people, I'm not going to mention names, there are people within politics and within journalism who actually are afraid for their family's safety if they were to speak as bluntly as perhaps I am speaking now. All right. This isn't like, hey, pot and kettle. The overwhelming amount of what's objectionable and incendiary and what has poisoned our national dialogue comes from the right, not because it's bad to be a conservative or Republican, but because of what Trump is and because of what MAGA is. And by the way, do facts matter at all? The kid who shot Trump, tried to kill him, and did kill the fireman in Butler, Pennsylvania, he fits the profile of a John Hinckley who tried to tried to kill Reagan to impress Jodie Foster. He's unhinged. he also Googled Biden's itinerary. So if Biden had been there, this messed up kid probably would have taken a crack at Joe Biden. You know what that assassination attempt and the one on the golf course have in common? Easy access to weapons that no citizen needs to have, and parents too irresponsible to check a kid who's deeply troubled and has 14 guns in the case of the Butler kid, 14 guns just lying around the house. And the same thing that happened during that time frame is the school shooting in Georgia, with enough red flags to have stopped everything in its tracks. That's the real talking point, but it doesn't serve the purpose of the Trump candidacy. So let's forget about that.
I appreciate all of your time, as always. Where do you think we're going to be in 10 days? And what are your greatest fears when you think about real infringements on freedom being possible in your lifetime?
Well, too big a question to get into, and maybe others of greater scholarship than myself should address that. But it's pretty clear that from the start, if you go back to 2016, people forget about this. Donald Trump was asked, will you accept the results of the election? He said, yes, if I win. All right. He's already priming his supporters. He's already in the mode, Proud Boys, stand back and stand by. There is a very good chance of violence if he does not win. There is every chance that he will contest the election, no matter what safeguards of a fair and credible election there may be. This is who he is. He's not constrained by evidence. He's not constrained by fact. He's not constrained by common sense, common decency, or allegiance to what once were common principles held by everybody across the political spectrum. We have to brace ourselves for that. Now, if he wins, if you've even perused Project 2025, which he lies about and says he knows nothing about, et cetera, because he lies about everything, it's frightening. And again, it doesn't have anything to do with rock solid conservative or Republican principles. Those things should be argued out rationally and civilly in the court of public opinion. This is all about MAGA, the cult of MAGA, the deranged personality of Donald Trump, and his handmaidens in the media and within the Republican Party who don't challenge him. The greatest thing that could have ever happened would be if the Wall Street Journal more forcefully, they're not among the top culprits, but more forcefully, and if right-wing talk radio more forcefully, and if Fox News at all would have said, look, these are the principles and the policies that we believe in. Let us get a sane, decent, honest person to put forth those policies, and let's talk it out with the American public. Instead, they went this way. And 8 years ago, this would be almost impossible to imagine, except for some of us. When he descended that escalator, I said to myself, this has to be a joke. It's just a branding exercise. And I'll leave you with this. You know, there's this label, TDS, Trump derangement syndrome. That's the way all of his supporters try to brush aside all of the reasonable objections to Donald Trump. I'm not going to answer that.
I love that it's a landline. It's good timing. You could.
It's a landline, and it's entirely possible that some of Trump's minions are already trying to tap it.
But you were rolling though. We'll forgive the intrusion.
This is what I'm concluding with. So Trump derangement syndrome, orange man bad. So like, oh, everyone's just overreacting to this person. He has a brusque personality. He's a bull in a china shop. Yes, he does have an obnoxious and graceless personality. He lacks the dignity that used to be required to be a contestant or appear on the Jerry Springer show. Yes, that's true. But there's a difference between personality and character. And the depths of the deprivation of his character has been shown 1,000 times over. But all you need is January 6th. Everything led up to it, and all the lies and the lies he continues to toss out there connected to it. This is an unhinged person who no sensible person would be comfortable with if they found out he was the principal of the junior high school their son or daughter attended. The real Trump derangement syndrome is, by this time, maybe not in 2016 when people rolled the dice, but by this time, anybody who truly believes that Trump has, in any sense, intellectually, emotionally, psychologically, morally, that he has ever been fit to hold any position of public trust, let alone the presidency, that is the true Trump derangement syndrome. There is nothing deranged about being appalled by what Donald Trump represents. In fact, it is an expression of common sense, awareness, and decency to feel that way. The derangement is to defend him, not to reject him.
You nailed the dismount, sir. Always a pleasure listening to you. Always a pleasure watching you work. Thank you for making time for us.
And now let us await the fallout. You will go about your business.
Yeah, it's coming.
And I will
your way.
brace myself for the cascade
it's
of
worth it,
clickbait
Bob,
and out of context
Bob,
idiocy.
if I may.
Is that a panic room?
If I may, Bob.
That's a panic room now. That's right.
If I may, Bob, I will say that I appreciate that you know that a week before the election, of course, you're going to get aggregated. But in my lifetime, you're one of the best to ever do it in this forum, and your ability to condense all of that, that's complicated, weird times we're in 12 minutes is a tribute to a talent you've perfected over 50 years in this business. So thank you, sir. I always appreciate
Dan,
you.
Thank you very much, Dan, and company. And in just a few seconds here, let me just tie it up to try and help those who have to write their clickbait headline. Sane, center-right, Adam Kinzinger, Mitt Romney probably wins easily. Center-left candidate, not connected to some of what reasonable lifelong Democrats and liberals even find a bit troubling, that person wins easily. Instead, for differing reasons on either side, we got a coin flip. And we're holding our breath on Tuesday.